The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched higher than most buildings on Earth. Thousands of alien beings filled the massive space, their voices creating a sound like ocean waves. Some looked like giant insects, others resembled walking trees, and a few appeared to be made of pure light. They had all come to see the same thing, the first humans to visit their world. Ambassador Zethkar adjusted his ceremonial robes and checked the translation device on his wrist. As the official greeter for new species, he had welcomed over 50 different races to the council. Each time followed the same pattern. The newcomers would send their wisest leaders, their greatest scientists, and their most skilled diplomats. There would be formal ceremonies, gift exchanges, and careful discussions about joining galactic society. The doors at the far end of the hall opened with a deep sound that echoed through the chamber. Every alien turned to look. The humans had arrived. 5 figures walked through the entrance. They wore identical black suits and moved with purpose. No ceremonial clothing, no gifts. No signs of wonder at the magnificent alien architecture around them. They simply walked forward like they owned the place. The lead human was a tall man with short brown hair and cold blue eyes. His name was Jake Morrison, though the aliens did not know this yet. Behind him walked 4 others. A woman with red hair named Lisa Kane, a dark-skinned man called Tony Rodriguez, a blonde woman named Amanda Cross, and a stocky man with gray hair, known as Rick Palmer. The crowd of aliens whispered among themselves. This was not what they had expected. Zethkar stepped forward, his 4 arms spread wide in the traditional greeting. He had practiced the human custom of handshaking for weeks. His translation device spoke the welcoming words that had been used for 1,000 years. Greetings, children of distant stars. We welcome you to the great family of galactic civilization. May your journey to wisdom be long and peaceful. Jake Morrison stopped in front of the alien ambassador. He looked at the outstretched arms, then at the crowd of watching aliens. His face showed no emotion. Skip the ceremony, Morrison said. His voice was calm but hard. We're here to do business. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small white card. He handed it to the confused alien. Zethkar looked at the card with all 6 of his eyes. It was perfectly rectangular and very simple. Black letters on white paper. Jake Morrison, Senior Negotiator, Earth Colonial Corporation. What is this? Zethkar asked, his translator struggling with the human's direct tone. My business card, Morrison replied. Now, who's in charge here? I want to talk to whoever makes the real decisions. The alien crowd grew louder. Some species had never heard such direct speech at a first meeting. Others thought the translation was broken. Surely these humans could not be this rude. Lisa Kane stepped up beside Morrison. She opened a slim black case and pulled out what looked like a flat screen. Lights flickered across its surface as data scrolled past. We've done our research, she said to Zethkar. Your trade routes are inefficient. Your resource management is wasteful. Your economic systems are at least 200 years behind what they could be. Tony Rodriguez moved to Morrison's other side. And your labor relations are a mess. Half the species in this room are being exploited by the other half. We can fix that. Amanda Cross was already scanning the Great Hall with her eyes. She was noting architectural details, counting the different species present, and calculating the legal implications of everything she saw. Rick Palmer remained silent, but his eyes moved constantly through the crowd. He was identifying which aliens looked nervous, which looked wealthy, and which looked desperate. Zethkar's translator was working overtime. Words like inefficient and exploited did not translate well into the formal language of galactic diplomacy. Perhaps, the alien ambassador said slowly, we should begin with the traditional welcome ceremony. There will be time for discussions later, Morrison smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Ambassador," he said, "let me explain something. We're not here to join your little club and follow your rules. We're here because Earth needs what you have, and you need what we can provide. The only question is whether we work together or whether we work around you." The great hall fell silent. In 1,000 years of galactic diplomacy, no new species had ever spoken this way. Morrison gestured to his team. "Lisa here specializes in restructuring failing organizations. Tony knows how to motivate workers. Amanda can find loopholes in any contract or law. Rick collects debts that people thought they'd never have to pay." He looked directly at Zethkar. "And I make deals. Good deals for Earth, and acceptable deals for everyone else." Morrison reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the air. Between him and the alien ambassador Dot, the display showed Earth. Then it showed images of human cities, human technology, and human military equipment. Ships that could travel between stars in days instead of months. Weapons that could crack planets. Manufacturing systems that could build anything in hours. "This is what we bring to the table," Morrison said. "The question is, what are you willing to trade for it?" The alien crowd erupted in noise. Some species were excited by the human technology. Others were frightened by the obvious military capabilities. Many were simply confused by the humans' aggressive approach. Zethkar looked at the business card in his hand, then at the holographic display, then at Morrison's cold blue eyes. "I think," he said carefully, "that we need to call an emergency meeting of the council leadership." Morrison's smile widened. "Now you're thinking like a businessman." As the humans followed Zethkar toward the council chambers, Lisa Kane leaned close to Morrison. "How long do you think it will take?" She whispered. "To take over?" Morrison replied quietly. "Give me 3 days." Behind them, the great hall buzzed with confusion and fear. The aliens had expected diplomats. Instead, they had gotten predators in expensive suits, and the predators were just getting started. The council chambers were smaller than the great hall, but no less impressive. Ancient symbols covered the walls, representing thousands of years of peaceful cooperation between different species. A large circular table sat in the center, with chairs designed for dozens of different body types. The human team spread out around the room like wolves studying prey. While the alien leaders took their traditional seats and began their formal opening procedures, the humans ignored protocol completely. Lisa Kane had set up her equipment at one end of the table. 3 holographic screens showed real-time data about galactic trade flows, resource distribution, and economic inefficiencies. Her fingers moved quickly across a projection keyboard as she analyzed centuries of alien business practices. "Interesting," she said to no one in particular. "Your shipping costs are 3 times higher than they need to be." The Viridian Trade Consortium representative, a slug-like creature named Geltos, turned all 6 of his eye stalks toward her. "Excuse me? Our shipping networks have operated successfully for over 800 years. Lisa looked up from her screens. "Successfully, yes. Efficiently, no. You're using fixed routes when dynamic routing would cut costs by 60%. You're maintaining redundant facilities, and your fuel procurement contracts are terrible." She touched her screen, and a new display appeared in the air above the table. It showed the Viridian trade routes as they currently existed, a complex web of fixed paths between star systems. "This is your current network," Lisa said. Then the display changed, showing streamlined routes that connected the same systems with far fewer ships and much shorter travel times. "This is what it should look like." Galtos stared at the display. Even with his limited understanding of human technology, he could see that their proposed system was better, much better. "How did you analyze our entire network so quickly?" He asked. Lisa smiled. We've been watching you for 3 months. Earth doesn't make first contact blind. Across the room, Tony Rodriguez had cornered a group of insect-like beings from the Kepler hive worlds. They looked nervous as the human leaned against the wall near their seats. So, Tony said casually, how long have your queen casts been? Skimming from worker wages? The largest insect, whose name translated roughly to Worker Prime 7, clicked his mandibles in surprise. That is not. We do not discuss internal hive matters with outsiders. Sure you do, Tony replied. Because it's not internal anymore. Your queens have been selling mining rights to other species and keeping all the profits. Meanwhile, you workers do all the actual mining and get just enough food to survive. Tony pulled out a small tablet and showed it to the insects. The screen displayed financial records that the hive workers had never seen before. This is how much your queens made last year selling titanium to the Rigel Consortium, Tony said. And this is how much they spent on worker food and housing. The difference was enormous. Worker Prime 7's compound eyes grew wider. How did you obtain this information? Because we're good at finding information, Tony said. The question is, what are you going to do about it? He leaned closer to the group of insects. Here's what I'm thinking. Earth needs mining rights in your sector. You need fair treatment from your queens. We help each other. Meanwhile, Amanda Cross had identified her targets, the Intellectual Preserve. This group of scholarly species controlled most of the galaxies. Scientific knowledge and technological patents. They sat together at one corner of the table, their leader a tall, thin being with purple skin and large black eyes. Amanda approached them with a stack of legal documents in her hands. Dr. Kelleth, she said to their leader, I've been reviewing your patent portfolio. The alien scholar looked up from his notes. I beg your pardon? Your patents, Amanda repeated. The legal protections on your technology. They're full of holes. She placed the documents on the table in front of him. For example, your faster-than-light communication system. The patent only covers the specific crystal configuration you use. It doesn't cover the underlying quantum principle. Dr. Kelleth frowned. Of course it does. We invented quantum entanglement communication. Amanda shook her head. You invented a specific application of quantum entanglement. The principle itself can't be patented, which means anyone who develops a different application owns their version. Outright, she opened the top document and pointed to a section of dense legal text. Earth has been developing our own quantum communication systems. Our methods are different from yours, but they're based on the same physics. According to galactic patent law, we now own the rights to our version. The scholar's face went pale. That's impossible. You just arrived here. We just announced our arrival, Amanda corrected. We've been preparing for this meeting for months. She smiled politely. The good news is that we're reasonable people. We're willing to license our technology to you at fair rates. At the far end of the room, Rick Palmer was having quiet conversations with several smaller alien delegations. These were species that most of the major powers ignored. Debt-ridden civilizations from the Outer Rim, failed colonies, and struggling trade partners. The thing is, Rick was saying to a reptilian creature whose scales looked dull with worry, that doesn't have to be forever. The alien, whose name was Seshik, shook his head sadly. Our world owes the Galactic Banking Consortium 40 million credits. We can barely make the minimum payments. What's the interest rate? Rick asked. 18% annually. Rick whistled low. Highway robbery. What did you borrow the money for? Terraforming equipment. Our world was damaged in a meteor strike. We needed to rebuild our atmosphere. Rick nodded thoughtfully. And I bet the same banks that loaned you the money also sold you the terraforming equipment at inflated prices. Seshik's eyes widened. How did you know? Because that's how predatory lending works, Rick said. But here's the thing. Earth specializes in debt restructuring. We buy bad debts from banks at a discount, then offer the borrowers better terms. He handed Seshik a business card. We'd buy your debt for maybe 20 million credits, then charge you 6% interest instead of 18. You save money, we make a profit, and the banks get their money back immediately. Why would you do this for us? The alien asked suspiciously. Rick's smile was friendly, but his eyes were calculating. Because grateful friends are valuable friends. And because your world sits right next to some very interesting asteroid fields that nobody's mining yet. In the center of the room, Jake Morrison had been listening to the formal speeches that the alien leaders seemed to think were necessary. Finally, he stood up. Okay, he said loudly, cutting off a rambling presentation about galactic history. Let's cut to the chase. The room fell silent. Morrison walked to the center of the circular table and looked around at all the alien faces. You've got problems, he said simply. Your economy is stagnant. Your trade systems are inefficient. Your workers are unhappy. Your patents are weak, and your banks are running protection rackets. Angry voices rose from around the table, but Morrison continued. The good news is that we can fix all of that. The bad news is that it's going to cost you. He gestured to his team. My people have identified solutions to every major problem in your civilization. We can increase trade efficiency, organize your workers, strengthen your legal systems, and restructure your debts. Morrison smiled coldly. All we want in return is a fair share of the benefits. Ambassador Zethkar stood up. Slowly. What exactly are you proposing? Partnership, Morrison said. Real partnership. Not this ceremonial nonsense where everyone pretends to be equals, while some species exploit others. We want to join your galactic community as full participants. And if we refuse? Dr. Kelleth asked. Morrison shrugged. Then you refuse. But our offers to individual species still stand. And I think you'll find that a lot of your members are interested in what we're selling. Around the room, Lisa Kane was still talking to trade representatives. Tony Rodriguez was organizing his new labor contacts. Amanda Cross was filing preliminary patent claims on her tablet. Rick Palmer was collecting signed agreements from desperate debtors. The established powers of the galaxy looked at each other nervously. They had expected to welcome a new species into their carefully balanced system. Instead, they were watching that system being dismantled by 5 humans in business suits. Morrison sat back down and checked his watch. We've been here for 6 hours, he said. In that time, my team has identified every weakness in your civilization and offered solutions to most of them. He looked directly at Zethkar. The question now is whether you want to work with us or try to work against us. The alien ambassador felt a chill run through his body. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he realized he was not in control of the situation. Earth had not sent diplomats. They had sent predators, and predators were winning. Day 2 of humanity's visit to the Galactic Council began before dawn. While most alien delegates were still sleeping in their quarters, the human team was already at work in their temporary office space. Jake Morrison stood before a large holographic display that showed the galaxy's power structure like a corporate organizational chart. Red lines connected various alien factions, showing who controlled what resources and who owed money to whom. Today, we go after the big prize, Morrison told. His team, the Stellar Communion, controls faster-than-light communication across the entire galaxy. Without their network, interstellar civilization falls apart. Lisa Kane looked up from her analysis reports. Their technology is ancient, but functional. They've had a monopoly for over 2,000 years. Monopolies make lazy companies, Morrison replied. and lazy companies are easy targets. The Stellar Communion occupied an entire wing of the council complex. Their representatives were not typical politicians or business leaders. They were priests and scholars who treated their communication technology as sacred knowledge rather than a commercial service. High Priest Valander was meditating in his private chamber when Morrison's team arrived. The priest was a tall, ethereal being whose skin seemed to glow with inner light. He had devoted his entire life to maintaining the ancient communication rituals. "We do not typically conduct business during morning devotions," the priest said when his assistants announced the humans' arrival. Morrison entered the chamber without waiting for permission. "That's part of your problem. You treat a business like a religion." Valander's glow flickered with surprise. "The Sacred Communication Network is not a business. It is a divine trust passed down through generations." "It's a communication service," Morrison corrected, "and not a very good one. Your messages take days to cross the galaxy. Your system requires massive temple complexes on every world. And your priests charge premium prices for basic data transmission." The human pulled out a small device, no larger than his hand. He pressed a button, and suddenly a voice filled the room. It was Lisa Kane, speaking from Earth in real time. "Jake, can you hear me? The quantum entanglement array is working perfectly." Morrison spoke back to the device. "Loud and clear, Lisa. How's the weather back home?" "Sunny and 75 degrees in New York." Valander stared at the device in shock. "That transmission came from your home world? Instantly?" "Quantum entanglement communication," Morrison explained. "No delay, no temple complexes required, and it works from anywhere in the galaxy. We've been using it to stay in touch with Earth since we arrived." The priest's glow dimmed noticeably. "That's impossible. Long-range communication requires massive power sources and trained operators." Morrison smiled and handed him the small device. "Try it yourself. Press the green button and ask for Dr. Watson at our science facility." With trembling hands, Valander pressed the button. A friendly human voice immediately responded. "This is Dr. Watson. How can I help you?" The priest nearly dropped the device. This is High Priest Valander of the Stellar Communion. I am speaking from the Galactic Council chambers. Pleased to meet you, Your Holiness. Beautiful day here on Earth. I understand you're interested in our communication technology?" Valander looked at Morrison with new understanding. "What do you want?" "Partnership," Morrison said simply. "We upgrade your entire network with our technology. In exchange, Earth gets a controlling interest in galactic communications." Meanwhile, Lisa Kane had moved beyond individual trade deals to something much larger. She had identified the fundamental weakness in the galactic economy. It was really dozens of separate economies that barely communicated with each other. In a meeting room filled with trade representatives from various species, Lisa stood before a massive holographic display showing galactic commerce flows. "Your problem," she told the assembled aliens, "is that you're thinking locally in a galactic market." She touched her control panel, and the display changed to show trade volumes between different sectors of the galaxy. The Andromeda arm has excess food production, but needs manufactured goods. The Orion sector has manufacturing capacity, but needs raw materials. The Outer Rim has raw materials, but needs everything else. The aliens nodded. This was basic galactic economics. "But," Lisa continued, "you're not connecting these markets efficiently. Food from Andromeda takes 6 months to reach Orion because it goes through 12 different middlemen. By the time it arrives, it's spoiled and expensive." She changed the display again, showing streamlined trade routes. Earth proposes a unified galactic market. Single currency, standardized contracts, direct routing between producers and consumers. We eliminate the middlemen and reduce costs by 70%. Geltos of the Viridian Trade Consortium raised one of his eye stalks. The middlemen you speak of removing. That includes us, Lisa smiled. Not necessarily. Middlemen who add value can stay. But middlemen who just take cuts of other people's work, well, the market doesn't need them. Her fingers danced across her control panel, and the display showed profit projections for various species under the new system. The Viridians could make more money shipping goods efficiently than they currently make skimming profits inefficiently. But you'd have to actually work for it. Across the complex, Tony Rodriguez was holding his own revolution. The worker representatives. He had contacted the day before had spread the word overnight. Now he stood before a crowd of laborers from dozens of different species. The queens, the owners, the managers, Tony said to the assembled workers, they all have one thing in common. They need you more than you need them. An insectoid worker from the hive worlds clicked his mandibles nervously. But they control everything. The food, the housing, the jobs. Do they? Tony asked. Who actually grows the food? Who builds the housing? Who does the jobs that keep civilization running? He pointed at the crowd. You do. All of you. The bosses just take credit and collect profits. Tony activated a holographic display showing industrial production across the galaxy. Earth's proposal is simple. Universal workers' rights. Fair wages based on productivity. Profit sharing for all employees. And the right to organize across species and star systems. A tree-like being from the forest worlds rustled his leaves skeptically. The corporations will never agree to this. They will if they want to keep operating, Tony replied. Because Earth is prepared to offer better deals to any workers who want to relocate. Better pay, better conditions, and actual respect. He smiled confidently. Your bosses can either treat you fairly or watch you leave for better opportunities. Amanda. Cross had spent the morning in the Council's legal archives, which contained thousands of years of laws, treaties, and precedents. What she found there was a lawyer's dream, a massive, contradictory mess of regulations that no one had ever bothered to reconcile. In a meeting with the Council's legal advisors, Amanda spread out holographic documents across a large table. Your legal system, she announced, is a disaster. The chief legal advisor, a scholarly being named Jurist Kalam, looked offended. Our laws have maintained galactic peace for millennia. Your laws contradict each other, Amanda replied. For example, Article 12 of the Trade Regulation. Code says that all species have equal access to galactic markets. But Section 7 of the Colonial Territory Act gives established species priority rights to new systems. She highlighted the relevant sections on her display. These two laws can't both be true. Either newcomers have equal rights or they don't. Jurist Kalam frowned as he read the contradictory passages. This is a very old discrepancy. It has never been tested in practice. It's about to be, Amanda said. Earth is filing formal complaints against 17 different species for violating our equal access rights. We're also challenging the colonial claims of any species that hasn't actively developed their territories within the past 50 years. She opened another document. Furthermore, we're claiming that any species that restricts trade with Earth is in violation of the Free Commerce Statute of 2847. The alien lawyer's face went pale. You cannot simply challenge centuries of established practice. Amanda's smile was sharp. Watch me. Rick Palmer was having the most direct success of all. His morning had been spent in private meetings with financially desperate species, and his offer was simple: immediate debt relief in exchange for long-term partnerships. In his latest meeting, he sat across from Seshik and 3 other representatives from financially struggling worlds. The Galactic Banking Consortium has you trapped, Rick explained. High interest rates, impossible payment schedules, and penalties that keep you in debt forever. He placed contracts on the table. Earth buys your debts at a 50% discount. We immediately reduce your interest rates to 3%. And we give you 5 years of payment deferrals to get back on your feet. Seshik studied the contract carefully. This seems too generous. What do you gain? Loyal partners, Rick replied. Friends who remember who helped them when they needed it most, and access to your territories for Earth's expansion. You want our worlds? We want to develop your worlds, Rick corrected. Build infrastructure, establish trade routes, create jobs. You keep sovereignty, but we work together. He leaned back in his chair. The alternative is staying trapped by the banks until your civilizations collapse completely. By noon, Jake Morrison had Archie. The emergency session of the Ancient Powers Council took place in the oldest chamber of the Galactic Council complex. The room had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations over the millennia. Its walls were covered with treaties written in languages that no living being could read. 7 species sat around the ancient stone table. These were the founders of galactic civilization, the oldest and most powerful races in known space. They had built the current order over thousands of years, and they were not about to let 5 humans in business suits tear it down. Emperor Dexfer of the Hegemony world spoke first. His species had ruled the galactic core for over 3,000 years. The humans had been here for 3 days. In that time, they have disrupted trade agreements, organized labor revolts, and challenged the legal foundation of our entire civilization. Matriarch Yulandra of the Eternal Sisterhood nodded her massive head. Her people controlled the galaxy's most advanced medical technology. They treat our sacred traditions like business transactions. They show no respect for the wisdom of ages. Prime Scholar Deathmer of the Knowledge Keepers adjusted his mechanical limbs nervously. Worse, their technology appears to be genuinely superior in several key areas. Their communication systems make ours look primitive, which is impossible. Emperor Dexver stated firmly, "We have had thousands of years to develop our technology. They have had mere centuries since discovering fire." General Korvac of the Protectorate forces leaned forward aggressively. His warrior species had maintained galactic peace through strength for millennia. Perhaps the time for talk has passed. A show of force might remind these humans of their place. "No," said Councillor Murthan of the Diplomatic Corps. His people had negotiated every major treaty in galactic history. Military action would validate their claim that we rule through fear rather than wisdom. We must find a legal solution. The ancient powers spent hours debating their response. Finally, they reached a decision that they believed would solve the human problem permanently. Jake Morrison received the formal document while he was having lunch with several minor species representatives. The message was delivered by a ceremonial guard in full ancient regalia. Morrison read the document while eating a sandwich. His expression never changed. "Problem?" asked Seshik, who had become one of Earth's strongest supporters. "The Ancient Powers Council has voted to restrict our membership in galactic civilization," Morrison said calmly. "We're being limited to observer status only. No voting rights, no territorial claims, and no commercial privileges beyond basic trade." The aliens at the table looked shocked. Such restrictions had never been imposed on a new species before. Morrison folded the document and put it in his pocket. Then he pulled out his communication device. "Lisa, Tony, Amanda, Rick," he said into the device. "Emergency meeting in our office. It's time for Phase 2. 20 minutes later, the human team gathered in their temporary headquarters. Morrison placed the restriction document on the table where everyone could see it. "They're trying to keep us in a corner," he said. "No real membership, no real rights. They want us to be grateful for whatever scraps they throw our way." Lisa Kane was already pulling up data on her screens. This gives us exactly what we need. To justify our next moves, they've made the first hostile act. Economic warfare? Tony asked. Total economic warfare. Morrison confirmed. No more playing nice. No more gradual pressure. We activate everything at once. Amanda Cross opened her legal files. I've been preparing for this possibility. The restriction order violates 17 different galactic laws and treaties. More importantly, it gives us legal justification for self-defense measures. Rick Palmer cracked his knuckles. My debt restructuring deals include clauses for situations like this. If any of our partner species are threatened or coerced, Earth has the right to take protective action. Morrison smiled coldly. Gentlemen, lady, it's time to show these ancient powers what happens when you corner predators. The first wave hit the galactic economy exactly 1 hour later. Lisa, Kane activated the derivative contracts she had been carefully constructing for 3 days. Species that had seemed financially stable suddenly found themselves facing massive margin calls. The Viridian Trade Consortium discovered that their shipping contracts now included emergency clauses that gave humans priority access to all transport capacity. Within minutes, critical supplies stopped flowing to ancient power worlds. Food shipments were redirected to human-friendly species. Raw materials sat in warehouses as shipping companies honored their new contracts with Earth. Manufacturing centers ground to a halt as workers discovered their supply chains had evaporated. Emperor Vexvey received the first emergency reports. Within an hour. Sir, his economic advisor said nervously, food shipments to our core worlds have stopped. The Viridians claim they are honoring prior contracts with higher priority. What prior contracts? The Emperor demanded. Contracts signed with Earth-affiliated companies yesterday, sir. The second wave came from Tony Rodriguez's labor networks. Across dozens of star systems, workers who had been quietly organizing for 3 days suddenly went on strike simultaneously. The Hive workers stopped mining operations on 12 worlds. Forest world lumber production ceased completely. Manufacturing workers on industrial planets simply walked away from their jobs. But these were not traditional strikes. Tony's workers had a unified demand: recognition of the universal workers, alliance and immediate negotiations with Earth representatives. Matriarch Yelandra's medical facilities were the first to feel the impact when their support staff joined. The strike. This is impossible, she told her subordinates. Our workers have been loyal for centuries. They would never organize without our knowledge. The human labor organizer has been very busy, Matriarch. He promised our people better conditions than they have ever known. The third wave was Amanda Cross's legal assault. Galactic courts suddenly found themselves flooded with hundreds of legal challenges filed simultaneously. Every major colonial claim was contested. Every trade agreement was scrutinized for discriminatory language. Every law that favored established species over newcomers was challenged on constitutional grounds. The legal system, designed to handle perhaps a dozen cases per year, was instantly overwhelmed. Prime Scholar Dever watched in horror as his Knowledge Keeper's exclusive patents were challenged one after another. They are claiming that basic scientific principles cannot be owned by any single species, his legal advisor reported. They are demanding that all fundamental research be placed in public domain. That would destroy our entire economic model, Defner replied. Yes, sir, that appears to be the point. The fourth wave was Rick Palmer's financial warfare. Every species that had accepted Earth's debt restructuring deals suddenly found themselves with new leverage over their former creditors. The Galactic Banking Consortium discovered that 40% of their outstanding loans had been transferred to Earth-controlled entities overnight. Worse, Earth was calling in debts that the major powers thought they had forgotten about. Ancient loans, treaty obligations, and ceremonial gifts were suddenly being treated as legally binding financial instruments. General Korvac, received a bill for 3 million credits, representing the accumulated interest on ceremonial tribute payments. Dating to the Treaty of Rigel 2455. "This is ridiculous," he told his financial staff. "Those were symbolic gifts, not loans." Earth's lawyers disagree, sir. They claim that according to the treaty language, any species that fails to maintain ceremonial payments owes compound interest on the missed amounts. By the end of the day, galactic civilization was in chaos. Trade had stopped. Workers were striking. Courts were paralyzed. Banks were calling in emergency loans. And then Jake Morrison delivered the final blow. He called a press conference in the main hall of the Galactic Council. Representatives from every species in the galaxy attended, either in person or through communication links. Morrison stood at the podium wearing his best suit and his coldest smile. 3 days ago, he began, Earth requested full membership in galactic civilization. Today, the Ancient Powers Council voted to deny that request and restrict our rights. He held up the restriction document. This illegal and discriminatory action has forced Earth to take defensive measures to protect our interests and those of our allies. Morrison gestured to his team, who were standing behind him. As of today, Earth is withdrawing from all negotiations with the Ancient Powers Council. We will deal directly with individual species who wish to work with us as equals. He paused to let that sink in. Furthermore, Earth's colonial fleet has arrived at the edge of the galaxy. 50 ships carrying 2 million colonists, along with full manufacturing and terraforming capabilities. The alien audience erupted in shocked voices. Morrison continued speaking over the noise. Any species that wishes to form partnerships with Earth is welcome to do so. Any species that chooses to support the discriminatory actions of the ancient powers will find that Earth has a very long memory. He looked directly at the section where the ancient powers representatives were sitting. You had a choice, Morrison said quietly, but the crisis reached its breaking point on the 4th day when the Stellar Communion's ancient communication network suffered a complete system failure. High Priest Valander stood in his temple's main chamber, watching in horror as the sacred crystals that had carried messages across the galaxy for 2 millennia went dark one by one. What is happening? He demanded of his technicians. Unknown, Your Holiness, replied his chief engineer. The quantum resonance patterns are completely disrupted. It's as if something is interfering with the fundamental frequencies. Valander felt a chill run through his glowing form. Contact the other temple worlds. Find out how widespread this is. We cannot, Your Holiness. The communication network is down. For the first time in recorded galactic history, faster-than-light communication had stopped working. Half the galaxy was suddenly cut off from the other half. Trade coordination became impossible. Military commands could not reach distant fleets. Entire star systems found themselves isolated. The Ancient Powers Council tried to hold an emergency meeting, but 3 of their members could not attend because they could not communicate with their representatives. Then, exactly 12 hours after the breakdown began, a message appeared on every working communication screen in the galaxy. The message was crystal clear, transmitted on frequencies that somehow cut through all the interference. This is Earth Colonial Command, the message. Side. We are now providing emergency communication services to all species affected by the recent network failure. Please contact your nearest Earth representative for access codes. Jake Morrison watched the chaos unfold from his office in the Galactic Council complex. His communication device showed dozens of incoming requests from species, desperate to restore contact with their scattered territories. The Stellar Communion is requesting an immediate meeting, Lisa Kane reported. They're offering full partnership in exchange for technical assistance. The Protectorate forces are asking if our communication system can coordinate their scattered fleets, Tony added. Their general is suddenly very polite. Amanda Cross looked up from her legal work. 17 species have filed formal requests to withdraw from the Ancient Powers Council. They want to negotiate separate agreements with Earth. Rick Palmer was fielding calls from panicking bankers. The Galactic Banking Consortium is offering to sell us their entire debt portfolio at 40 cents on the credit. They need liquid assets to handle the crisis. Morrison smiled and activated his communication device. Dr. Watson, are our quantum entanglement arrays ready for full galactic deployment? The voice from Earth responded immediately. Ready and waiting, sir. We can have the entire galaxy connected within 6 hours if needed. Hold that capability in reserve, Morrison said. Let them sweat a little longer. He turned to his team. It's time for the final meeting. The Great Assembly Hall had never seen anything like it. Every species in the galaxy had sent representatives, even those who had never participated in council meetings before. The ancient powers sat in their traditional seats, but they no longer commanded the room's attention. Jake Morrison walked to the center of the hall, and the massive chamber fell. Silent. He wore his best suit and carried a simple briefcase. 4 days ago, Morrison began, Earth requested membership in galactic civilization. The ancient powers responded by trying to restrict our rights and limit our participation. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. Today, Earth is making a different kind of offer. Morrison activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy divided into clear economic and political zones. The current system is failing, he stated. Simply, communication networks are breaking down. Trade routes are inefficient. Workers are exploited. Innovation is stifled by ancient monopolies. He gestured to the ancient powers section. The old ways worked when the galaxy was smaller and simpler. But you now have over 300 species, 10,000 star systems, and billions of beings trying to function under laws written for a much simpler time. The display changed to show a streamlined organizational structure. Earth proposes a new model. A true galactic federation with standardized laws, unified currency, and efficient resource allocation. Every species gets representation based on their contribution to the common good, not their age or traditional power. Emperor Thexver stood up angrily. You seek to destroy everything we have built. I seek to improve everything you have built, Morrison replied calmly. Your empire controls dozens of star systems, but hasn't developed a new technology in 500 years. Meanwhile, species in the Outer Rim are creating innovations you've never imagined, but they can't get market access because of your trade restrictions. Morrison pointed to different sections of the audience. The forest worlds have developed atmospheric processing that could terraform dead planets in years instead of centuries. The crystal entities have perfected energy storage beyond anything you've seen. The hive workers have organizational efficiency that puts your bureaucracies to shame. But none of them can reach their full potential because the current system favors tradition over innovation, age over ability, and connections over competence. Matriarch Yolendra spoke up. And Earth would be different? Earth would be competitive, Morrison said. We believe the best ideas should win, regardless of who has them. We believe workers should be rewarded based on their contributions. We believe progress is more important than precedent. He smiled coldly. And we believe that species who can't adapt to a changing galaxy will be replaced by species who can. Hall erupted in arguments, but Morrison continued speaking. Here's what Earth offers to every species in this room. Partnership based on mutual benefit. Access to our technology in exchange for access to your resources and knowledge. Fair representation in a new galactic government that actually works. Morrison's voice grew stronger. And here's what Earth offers to the ancient powers specifically. A chance to join the new system as senior partners instead of being replaced by it. General Korvac stood up. And if we refuse? Morrison shrugged. Then you refuse. But the new system goes forward anyway. Our colonial fleet is already establishing settlements in the Outer Rim. 47 species have requested Earth citizenship, and our communication network can connect anyone who wants to join the new Federation. He looked directly at the ancient powers. You can be part of the solution, or you can be part of the problem. But the galaxy is changing, whether you participate or not. Ambassador Zethkar raised one of his arms. What guarantees do we have that Earth will honor these agreements? The same guarantee any business partnership has, Morrison replied. Mutual self-interest. Earth succeeds when our partners succeed. We have no interest in ruling over a galaxy of failures. Lisa Kane stepped forward and activated a new display showing economic projections. Under the current system, galactic GDP grows at 2% annually, she said. Under Earth's proposed reforms, economic modeling shows potential growth of 15 to 20% per year. Those numbers are impossible, Emperor Nexver protested. Those numbers assume you eliminate the inefficiencies we've identified. Lisa replied, streamlined trade routes, fair labor practices, unified currency, and competition-based resource allocation. Tony Rodriguez moved to the center of the hall. Every worker in this room would see their standard of living improve. Under the new system, better wages, better working conditions, and actual opportunities for advancement. Amanda Cross opened her legal files. Every species would have equal rights and equal protection under standardized galactic law. No more special privileges for ancient powers. No more discrimination against newcomers. Rick Palmer presented his financial analysis. Every civilization would have access to fair lending and debt restructuring. No more predatory banking practices. No more impossible interest rates. Morrison let his team's presentation sink in and spoke again. Earth is not asking you to trust us, he said. We're asking you to trust yourselves. Trust your own ability to compete and succeed in a fair system. He looked around the hall at hundreds of alien faces. The question is simple. Do you want to be part of a dynamic, growing galactic civilization, or do you want to preserve a stagnant museum of past glories? Morrison walked back to the center of the hall and placed a document on the central table. The Galactic Federation Charter, he announced. Any species that signs becomes a founding member of the new system. Any species that doesn't can continue operating under the old rules. He smiled one last time. But remember, in the new galaxy, the best ideas win, and Earth has a lot of good ideas. The voting took 6 hours. When it was finished, 243 species had signed the charter. Only the 7 ancient powers had refused. Emperor Thexfer stood up slowly. This is not over, he said to Morrison. Yes, it is, Morrison replied quietly. You just don't know it yet. The next morning, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Earth's flagship, watching as the colonial fleet spread out across the galaxy. 50 ships became 100, then 500, as manufacturing vessels began producing new craft from asteroid resources. Lisa Kane joined him at the viewport. The Galactic Federation Exchange opens in 6 hours. 40 species have already listed their currencies for conversion to Federation credits. Tony Rodriguez arrived.